So, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Brendan Searle, and many of you would have heard me talk already, so I won't introduce myself. So today we're going to be talking on the state of modular, and we have a panel from across North America, I guess. So I'll let each panelist introduce themselves, then we'll dive in to some questions and give the audience an opportunity to ask questions. So I'll start with you, Laurie, introducing yourself.
Thank you for coming. Laurie Robert, I'm Vice President of Sales and Business Development for Fero International. Prior to that, I've been in the modular building industry for about 35 plus years, working as VP of Sales in Canada and in the US. So I've got kind of flavors of both sides of the border and how the industry works. Currently sit as the chair of CSA's Modular Construction Oversight Committee, and I work on the design committee with them. And I also sit on the board of directors for UNB's Offsite Construction Research Center. That's me.
Thanks. Enda?
Hi everyone, my name is Enda McDonagh. I'm a principal at Montgomery Sisam Architects here in Toronto. We've been deep in kind of the world of volumetric and panelized modular for the last number of years. Specifically, we've worked with a lot of municipalities on their supportive housing and shelter housing. And we've also completed a large long-term care through volumetric modular.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Patrick Crabbe. I'm the director of mass timber at Bird Construction. So I kind of live in the prefabricated manufacturing space, but I'm strategically involved with a company, Stack Modular, that we're a 50% owner of, where we do cold form steel volumetric modulars in Shanghai, China, and ship them all over the world. We're building in Africa and just a bunch of different places, so it's quite unique. And the lens that I'm bringing to this session is I'm currently an owner and a developer. So from the development perspective, as well as the contractor perspective, and then we're starting a manufacturing company that's focused on next generation mass timber prefab and modular, so more from a manufacturer perspective too.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here. My name is August Nazareth. I am from the British Standards Institute. We're in 93 countries. We're probably one of the first companies that started best practices, standards. We're now involved with the ISO, a founding member of the ISO. My role is Global Director of the Built Environment. So in this role, most of what I do is to try and work with organizations like Building Transformations and similar organizations to create a better built environment, safer, with sustainability, circular economy, standardization. And I'm from New York City.
Great. All right. So we'll get started, and I'll start with you, Laurie. How has the modular offsite construction industry evolved over the past few years, or even further back, both I guess in the country and around the world from what you've seen?
Okay, so I can go back a little bit of time because I've been in it for a little bit of time. So if you go back, in the 90s, modular construction was essentially portable buildings. There was more temporary facilities. And over the 90s and into the early 2000s, it sort of morphed into two completely separate parts of the industry. You have relocatable structures, and then it moved to permanent modular construction. And so there was a lot of emphasis placed on the development of permanent modular construction now for the past at least 20, 25 years. So I've seen that evolution. Back in the older days, we always talked about education, so educating the market in terms of why, what modular was. It's not a trailer, it's actually something more. It's not the job site trailer on the site that's building the medical center, it's actually now the medical center, right? So it's a huge difference between the two methodologies. So from there, then we went to what are the benefits, right? So that was kind of the next phase of modular evolution is why would I want to, as a market, why would I want to adopt it? Well, there's all sorts of benefits. There's value proposition. I think you've probably heard a lot of it discussed today. And then today I find we're in sort of more the how. We're in the how phase. So the market pretty much understands what permanent modular construction is, volumetric. They understand what the benefits are, speed of construction, cost certainty, everything you've probably heard today. But I think the thing we need to focus on more so today is how do you work with it? It's such a different process. And so the planning requirement is stringent. There's a lot to it. And I think that's where we might stub our toe a little bit as an industry. And just markets, just the understanding of how to work with it. But in the past few years, I think the biggest change that I've seen is in the level of interest. Like the level of interest, and this is fueled by crisis in housing, there's crisis in healthcare infrastructure, there's crisis in space shortages everywhere. So modular kind of rises to the top just because of the value propositions that it offers. So I've seen a lot of really higher level of interest in the past 5 years. And then we have, roadblocks. I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah. How about yourself, Enda?
I think, I have a much sort of shorter window of time in terms of my assessment of modular, but I always come back to sort of the question of what is modular. And there is not a single building being built now, whether we sort of think of it as traditional built or the other end of the spectrum, which is full volumetric. There is no building being built right now that doesn't have some modular component to it. You think of your cabinetry, your millwork. Every building is a modular building. And so what we've seen an evolution of over the past number of years is from, say, starting in the industry in Ireland, we had pod bathrooms that were just on every single project. Every washroom came from overseas, was dropped on the site for hotels or residential, and that was seen as a way of removing deficiencies on what's traditionally kind of a fairly intense kind of area of work. And coming over here to Canada then, we sort of dived right in at full volumetric modular, responding to the housing shortage that started around coinciding kind of with the start of COVID to an extent. But we've seen internally in our office an evolution from volumetric as the main sort of conversation to panelized modular as now being a big part of the conversation. And so that's looking at mass timber solutions or CLT or otherwise looking at other cladding solutions that can allow you to essentially build quicker. But so that's kind of the main evolution that we've seen technologically. It's all kind of been there. It's just, as Laurie mentioned, it's what's the conversation right now, and that's kind of our evolution through the process.
Patrick, how about yourself?
There was an interesting point. I was at a affordable housing conference, and one of the government officials that was talking about this, because I heard you use the word crisis, and they said it's not a crisis because we've seen it coming. We're just not doing anything about it. So, all right, what have I seen change? I feel that the level of sophistication, and Laurie's point about now we're in the how, so clients are much more informed. They're seriously considering a modular solution opposed to just saying, or Bird having to push or kind of create that platform to explore it. So there's a shift into the how for sure. Through COVID and supply chain challenges, as we've all experienced in some capacity, whether it be microchips or building components, is that the traditional way to deliver a project through certain contract models, like let's say a hard bid where you design in a silo and then you put to market and then the low bids are awarded, that doesn't work anymore. Prices are coming back way too high. And when you have like a DFMA or design for manufacturing and assembly solution like mass timber or modular, you have to involve certain companies up front, and how you onboard those in a competitive, collaborative process early on is so critical. So the biggest change I'm seeing is now governments are understanding our hard bid tendering system is not working, projects are not getting built, we're having to go back to the drawing board and redesign to make projects fit our budget. And then by the time we redesign it or shrink the scope of the building, the price has gone up when we go back out to the market in the first place. So it's more in a shift of two contracting models specifically, modified design build. Can anyone raise their hand who has heard of progressive or modified design build? Okay, great. And integrated project delivery, IPD. So these are truly, I think the future on how you deliver projects is you are awarding teams to support the owner and the objective of the building based on their experience, creativity of the team, synergies, a little bit of their fee, and any other unique things that the businesses can offer. And you're totally, I guess, capturing the creativity of the team and designing to a budget. So, and having the major components involved on your team to supply those components. So anyway, that's what I'm seeing as collaborative contracting.
Thanks.
All right, so can you hear me? So I'll come to it from a different perspective from my colleagues. So it's more based on sustainability and maybe an organization's needs for ESG reporting, and how many organizations, if you're Hitachi Energy or Pfizer, and you're trying to reduce your carbon and your carbon load, and you're trying to decarbonize all your building stock, or your new building stock. So I think that it lends itself, prefabrication and modular is leading, or is a way to combat that, as well as how do you make your buildings more sustainable? So if you're using just design, DFMA, and the ability to dismantle those buildings. So if you've got prefabricated modules or panelized, so if the idea is you're designing with the intent of taking it apart so that if one component goes bad, you can always replace it. So you're not replacing the entire thing. So I think that's where a lot of that is going for the future, and BIM plays a large part in that, digital twins. We're also seeing a lot of use in IoT and other technologies like reality capture. So we were in a really interesting conversation just now on reality capture being used for prefabrication, and minimizes a lot of time on the field as well as waste.
Yeah. And obviously those technologies can help with tolerance control, which is vital when it comes to modular. So going into technological advancements, obviously, we've heard a lot today and even this morning about robotics and the pros and cons, and those come with a lot of overhead costs and so on. But there are other technological advancements which you alluded to, August, around there's design for manufacturing assembly, but now we're starting to hear design for manufacturing and assembly and eventual disassembly to reuse the building. So what have you seen, I guess, August, from a standards or from a contractual or from a government side on the future of it when it comes to that disassembly or reuse of buildings for different purposes, and what can modular do to...
So that kind of leads us into a circular economy. I don't know how big the circular economy is here in Canada, but it's much bigger in the EU, England. It's becoming much bigger in the States. We've got 3 different legislative acts that call for a circular economy. So once you start to incorporate that, your regulations start to become things like in the EU, the extended producer responsibility. So you can, at some point, it's going to be, you won't be able to just create modules, prefabricated pieces, without having a plan for what is going to happen to that material when it's time to discard it. You will, as an organization, will most likely have responsibility of it to infinity. So that is to me, is a very big regulation. And a few states in the US have it. I'm not sure about Canada. And over time, more and more will do that. And they're already using it for packaging. So I would say that's one of the big things.
Good. And how about you, Patrick, on technological advancements that you see?
I just kind of want to build off that point, is that there's currently an RFQ on the street for the Toronto airport, and that's one of the requirements for the design is for disassembly and then repurposing. But I don't mean to be blunt, But from my expertise in mass timber, people can't even build a standard mass timber building. So I just really fear that sometimes we step too far ahead at the shiny thing before we can, understand how to do things simply and properly. And even from a contractor perspective, around disassembly, there's just contingency that it has to be, I would say, more of an informed process and structured properly for it to be competitive. I guess on the other side of advancements is around life cycle analysis. I really think that there's a huge role to play there with lean manufacturing and efficiency with modular buildings. Just a bit of a plug here for mass timber, but currently worked on a project with the University of Toronto. The study's going to become public here soon. And we looked at the embodied carbon analysis through life cycle analysis of mass timber buildings versus concrete and steel. And pretty much the conclusion is that with mass timber, you can build 3 buildings for the carbon impact of 1. So that's a major blind spot, is kind of on the embodied side. And the city of Toronto has actually implemented embodied carbon requirements on their latest RFP for rapid modular housing. And our steel stack modular Chinese solution didn't quite meet those metrics, but it certainly was a competitive option. And a mass timber solution ended up being awarded. So I feel it's kind of catching on. It's less theoretical and out in the ether, and I think it's a responsible thing for our governments to take seriously.
Great, yeah. And how about yourself? And I know you come from the design architecture field, but and it could be maybe technological advancements in design that influence, or what do you see?
Yeah, I think, just to sort of address the sustainability conversation kind of as it pertains to that, in our office we sort of assess things from the lens of what's the anticipated lifetime of the building, and you make material choices based on that. And so if, for example, the University of Toronto have a mandate that, there's like this 100-year lifetime mandate on the buildings. And so you're not choosing a material that's going to disintegrate or give you a ton of maintenance in the short term on that. You're looking at long-term durable materials. But each project is unique in that regard, and you sort of involve your client in those conversations and set the expectations. But similarly, we're seeing municipalities themselves setting goals and growing kind of their targets in a really positive way, and we're not there yet. At least I haven't seen any RFPs sort of hit our desk where it's designed for disassembly. It's just not come across our desk yet, but I definitely sort of support that and love to sort of investigate that more, but we're not there yet, I don't believe.
We're not totally there in the States. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, not totally there. But I think with those 2 new legislative acts, the 3, you will start to see more impetus because there's funding available.
Yeah. So I think, and it's like a lot of these things, is that ultimately I think we will get there, but not there yet. In terms of the actual technology, I just think that it's really individual manufacturers that are bringing sort of ideas to us for our projects, or rather than kind of, we haven't certainly as an architectural industry, we haven't greatly evolved our process. We're sort of, for good or for bad, we're still looking at it as it is modular is not necessarily the end product. It's a means to get to. It's another method of building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yourself, Laurie?
Yes, I'm going to build again on the sustainability because I do work with CSA, and there is sort of a bit of a focus on looking at design for disassembly, and what does that mean? So it's a bit obscure, right? There's no hard, fast rules to it. But modular construction specifically, if it goes in pieces, it should be able to more readily come out in pieces. That's the theory, right? And it's a solid theory. Because if Fero's a manufacturing plant, right? So if we build modules, we're going to try and get them to 90% completion. So we'll put them in 90% complete. Now the facades and there could be obviously cladding systems that go on after the fact. There's rooftop units, whatever else goes on the building once it gets there. That's a whole different story. But there's a lot of talk about balancing the cost of deconstruction versus demolition and rebuilding. Like, what's the cost? But is it the cost we're talking about, or is it carbon footprint we're talking about, right? It's a different, you have to look at it through different lens.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that sort of finishes my inherently modular construction. If it goes in pieces, it should be able to more readily come out in pieces. Theoretically, I don't know that too many people have actually tested it, but that is the theory that I'm sticking to.
I was part of a modular project that was moved from
I've been involved
one
in one.
space to another, but I have anecdotally heard that in general it is an extremely expensive exercise.
It's an
to-
expensive
to
exercise, but
deconstruct a
the difference is, do you demolish it and then rebuild somewhere else, or can you actually move it and repurpose it for you? So, right, it's a long range kind of conversation to finish off, but it's still worthwhile having, obviously.
So, if I may, there's a case study of a building that was done by the ABN AMRO Bank in Amsterdam. So Amsterdam is huge in sustainability. It's a small country. They really need to. So they created this building. They had to get all the stakeholders involved right at the beginning. The construction, subcontractors, because they all had to agree on how this thing would be. It's one of their, their headquarters almost, right? So they decided there was going to be no glue, there was going to be no paint, and everything was pretty much screwed together. So the idea is the facade can come out and be moved to another place or repurposed. The entire building is like that, and it's a great case study. It's called Circle, CIRL, and if you take a look at it, they've done a fantastic video on how they went through it. It took a long time, and it did cost a lot, but it was the ABN Bank who goes with that they're a sustainable bank.
That's kind of groundbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
there are not
so-
too many of those though.
No, I know. We'll get there. Yeah, so for the rest of technology, I mean, I agree. The reality capture, I sat in that same presentation that you did, August, a little while ago. Any technology that can help us design a better building, any technology that can help us finish a better building or fit and finish of a better building, the technology within the manufacturing plant itself, that's debatable. Whatever helps you move the manufacturing process quicker, whatever helps you push bigger volumes through the manufacturing plant, that technology is always, that's an excellent technology, but it's an enabler, I think, right? What it means, what happens is you need the backlog. So the manufacturing company, we have a 300,000 square foot manufacturing plant. It's pretty big. So you need a lot of backlog to push through that plant on a consistent basis in order to pay for the investment in like robotics. So you're not seeing, I don't think you're seeing a lot of manufacturers at this point, because it's a bit of fits and starts in terms of, how much, what am I going to get? What's coming in housing, what's coming in healthcare, what's coming in education, commercial, industrial, data centers. What is it that we have in modular construction that can support the investment of that type of technology? But all the other technologies that support building a better product from a design perspective and from the reality capture perspective, I think that's where we certainly at least need to be there.
Yeah, and I mean even so I'm supposed to be asking questions, but at the research center we do work with a lot of modular companies, and there's some things that start with just digitizing some processes, whether it be around the QA/QC process or just having a database that's more centralized across all their departments so they can work better. Now a lot of these organizations are looking at new, one company came to us and said, we want to double our productivity in 18 months. And we said, okay, we don't have a genie in a bottle, but we can help. And so it's been 3 years later, and we're still trying to help them implement a software that will then allow them to purchase an automated saw that will then speed up some of the simpler tasks. But they're hesitant to make that investment. They've been around for 50 years, family owned, so on and so forth. So anyways, that's a bit of, I think it's part of it. They're just risk averse, and like you said, they need to know that that backlog is always there to pay off
It's
that.
kind of circular. The modular building industry or mass timber, whatever it is, you need commitment from the markets, right? That they're going to pursue, they're going to follow through with their commitment to the industry. Otherwise, the industry is they're stuck, right?
So there's two things that come to my mind in that conversation is that it's kind of risky to be in the modular manufacturing space right now with the market development, same as mass timber, because you're not a commodity yet. It's not an established supply chain. You're actually a construction solution provider.
Right.
So you're involved in every facet of the business, and your capacity is dependent on projects meeting schedule. So if something slips, you have a gap, and then you're not truly accessing those like economies of scale through production and cost savings. So it's a challenge, and this is kind of where the supply chain has to be set up properly. But one of the solutions, and I know it's part of a question that you're going to ask, but we've been studying modular solutions in other parts of the world, both mass timber and steel, and the government is actually saying to the 5 or 6 manufacturers that are out there on an annual basis, we need 15 schools. So you get so many schools, you get so many schools, you get so many schools. And that is their baseline capacity if projects slip. So they have, that backlog like you're talking about, as long as they deliver these projects by a certain time. So it just really helps maximize the capacity of the plants and deliver the critical infrastructure that's needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
That would never work in Canada, but it would be.
Well, it's funny you say that because, like, in New Brunswick, I was saying to Laurie earlier, like, they announced in New Brunswick, small province, so they announced a certain amount of affordable houses, and they were going to do X amount stick built, X amount modular, and there's surprisingly 8 modular manufacturers in a province of less than 1 million people, and they build quite a bit. So, naturally you think you sole source by geography and ramp it up and give them guarantees. And anyways, it hasn't quite worked out as they hoped. So that kind of leads us into the procurement strategy that we wanted to talk about. So let's go there. I was going to ask, what are the most significant challenges to scaling modular construction for residential or any market? But Patrick, I think you alluded to it earlier with contracts and RFP. So maybe Laurie, if you want to start.
Well, I think we've heard a lot of conversation throughout this whole day about regulatory issues and permitting and the challenges that we all face there. And I think that it's the same, and it doesn't matter if it's conventional construction or modular construction. Modular and mass timber as prefabricated buildings, you're not going to make that go away, right? You're going to have to live with whatever that process is all the way along. You limp along until you can finally get your building permit. Jump in because you're going to know this probably better than I. But my point is, I think if you wanted to really scale up housing, that's a really good example, because that's the emphasis, it seems, today in prefabrication. But if you want to scale up housing, you have to develop more of a program. It's got to be a modular housing program. It can't be project-based. Right? Every time you have a project-based scenario, and you and I've worked on a few together, you have a project, it's going into a certain location and it has to fit a certain site, and it's going to have different unique attributes to it than maybe the one up the street or around the corner. So you're constantly, as a modular builder, you're constantly working on project development instead of program development. Program development means I should be able to pre-build modules of this nature to certain geographical areas where they'll fit the seismic and the snow and the wind and loads. But you need the support of the government, right? You need the support of owners, developers. Everybody needs to be on board. Modular construction, and I'm sure mass timbers, it's the same, highly collaborative process. One doesn't work without the other. There's a team of stakeholders, and if somebody's not on board with the process, the whole thing could go sideways. At least that's been my experience. Has that been your experience too?
No, that's good.
Sure.
We always talk about the restrictions in the market, right? Like, what's going to be the definition that tips us into the right category? And you hit the nail on the head. So, what is going to force the owners, the government, into pushing the right degree to make sure that modular prefabrication is put at the forefront?
Well, I would say that it's just market-based. right now. It's people are looking to other alternatives to deliver projects. So I think that there's an organic push. That's one piece. That's my comment.
I was going to say that right now, can I call it a housing crisis? I don't have another title for it. But
Problem.
Crunch.
It's a problem.
Crunch.
yeah, but the reality is that if you build with traditional methods or panelized methods or volumetric modular or mass timber or anything, we're still not meeting the demand. There's sort of room for every building type right now, because we need every single resource available to create a housing stock and to get caught up. And so whether it's regulatory or just incentivizing the market, there's a there's a way out there to get everybody moving to solve this. And modular, whether like I say, any form of modular, it can fill that void and can do it very well. And modular is the right solution on the right site. Traditional is the right solution on the right site. Mass timber or panelized is the right solution on the right site. It's about assessing which one's going to work best for which site, which context. But right now, there's I think what's stopping it is just the market's kind of sort of not there yet with sort of accepting
Prefab.
volumetric or prefab in the same way that they are with traditional. It's just a conservative kind of approach to building.
Do you know what would really accelerate it? And it's a bigger conversation, but finance rates. And if that's something that could be delivered through CMHC for modular solutions, but ultimately money talks. So if there's an incentive that way, I think it would totally accelerate it. And this is interesting. At Bird, I have the privilege to kind of hear some pretty important meetings around financial strategy and different things. So I'm not going to sell the farm here, but CIBC is our bank, and when we analyze different investments or vertical integration of mergers and acquisitions, if we invest in oil and gas now, it affects our finance rate. But if we invest in more sustainable or forward-thinking type of businesses, we can borrow money at more competitive rates. So I think that's a huge barometer that would tip it.
Is that driven by the government though? Like, surely that's not banks themselves driving that effect.
Well, I think it's all part of the reporting metrics, right? Of what is investors, what's the strategic plan, and what investors are you tailoring to, more or less. Again, money makes the world go around.
To get to your procurement question, which is more specific, the procurement, and I'm happy to listen to all of you on the procurement process, because the procurement process for modularization, prefabrication, anything that's built offsite in a plant, it doesn't lend itself well to the process, really.
No,
right?
There's clients have a sort of a hard time. Actually, particularly experienced clients have a hard time around the first series of payments,
Right.
where they sort of understand that where they might traditionally have gone through a design process that has a set period of time, and there's this understanding of sort of. And they get to see into that process. We're very transparent about it, and so they sort of ramp up into the idea that they're going to be spending an amount of money slowly over the period of project, and they're going to see the development of that on
Right.
their site over the course of that project.
And that doesn't happen with.
And it doesn't happen with modular. They have to sort of hand over a suitcase of money from day one. And,
because as a manufacturer,
yeah.
right, we have to procure up front.
Exactly.
And the decision-making process is done up front. So before you put the foundations in, we need your paint colors. And that makes no sense when you think about conventional building. So, but the manufacturer, it's on the manufacturer to have to procure all of this material, because the actual fabrication process, it's anticlimactic by comparison to everything else you have to go through to get it in the plant.
Yeah.
But it's a fairly quick process, right? But everything has to be on hand. And so that amount of investment is significant, right?
And I think that that's kind of, again, where the financial institutions can step up a bit, because there's an opportunity cost to giving all that money up front for procurement where you could be making that money elsewhere. So it's kind of a negative on the value proposition. And if there's a way to soften that,
but if you shorten the construction schedule by 30
it.
or 40%,
It should balance.
saving, right? It should work out.
And maybe you can speak to some contractual or some projects that went well contractually that maybe could be lessons learned that we could adopt. I know, Laurie, you mentioned an academic institution did an RFI before RFQ
that was a breath of fresh air. So we actually have, and I won't name names, but there's actually, and you know of it, right? There's a college put out an RFI, and I thought to myself, well, how unique is this? They're actually asking for our opinion on how we think this thing should be procured. What's the best procurement model? Is it design build? Is it design bid build? Are there honorariums? I mean, wow, who asked that question, right?
I know
So,
I answered it.
I know, I'm sure you did. So, but my point being, they were trying to learn as much as they possibly could about the best practices of buying modular construction and understand it. And they went to a variety of stakeholders, right? Design, contractors, modular builders. I'm sure they had a massive response to that. So now it's their job to sort through it all and find, where's the commonalities. But I thought the RFI process, it was an RFI, them asking the industry, what do we need to do? What would you advise us to do?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really unique. And I would support that process any given day, because now it would go from an RFI probably to a pre-qualification or maybe to an RFP, but they're going to do it with information. Like, they've been informed in what the industry needs to succeed, to make them succeed. So I thought that's the first time I've ever seen it.
Yeah, and I think ultimately from that process, which I actually totally support your answer there, I think whether they go now to a pre-qualified group or to open market with an RFP, they're still
Eyes
going to
wide
get
open.
some real good, really great value.
Yep.
And they have honest answers from the market before they put that together. And that's an experienced client. That's a college that they have experienced sort of project building and procurement behind them, and so they're still coming to this going like, hey, we can learn, and in that learning process we can, if they truly sort of assess all the answers and they could put out one of the most
The
competitive
best I've ever
RFPs,
seen.
best RFP
Yep.
that we've seen in a very
Yeah.
long time.
So I'm looking forward to the next step.
One thing I find super fascinating, just dealing with post-secondary institutions and government at different levels around procurement, is that there can be a group of these capital project directors and operators, even the people that are holding the purse strings, that are like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then when it gets to procurement, it just goes into a black hole. And like the same things just end up getting done. Or they take something that was working and try and put their own spin on it, which just completely, counteracts what they were trying to do in the first place. So it's super interesting. And one thing that we're trying to develop in partnership with UNB is a way to onboard suppliers or key trade people, modular manufacturers, as early in the process as possible with limited design information in a competitive manner. So much like a modified design build award process will work, there's a lot of qualitative factors that go into it. So that's exactly what we're going to try and bring to the public sphere so that these projects go properly.
Yeah.
So let me just add something. I think from the owner's perspective, so you own a huge university, or you own a hospital group, so you're used to doing, say, stick construction for your adaptations, your new buildings, whatever. But there's certain rules with that, right? There's regulations you have to follow. Those regulations. What your insurance requirements are. All of that for traditional construction. And then considering modularity or prefabrication, and that, I think all the rules must be a little different, right? If you're dealing with insurance, there must be different insurance requirements. So the owner or the person that's dealing with either procurement or specifying has to get that information, because how do you send out an RFP without some information, right? Like that. So I think there's a lot of challenges. What about warranty? It's now a manufactured building. Is there a warranty? Is it different from traditional?
That's pretty similar.
So I think
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's kind of we can get into what role can government play in creating a more productive and taking advantage of the manufacturer building sector. We know Next Generation Canada and Gen's coming out with a housing challenge. I think that's public now, and they're getting federal government money to pilot projects to really accelerate housing. We heard this morning from Mark Farmer talk about Homes England and what the UK has done successfully or unsuccessfully, I guess. And I know even little province of Prince Edward Island put out an RFP. And it was essentially to fund modular plants on the island, create a modular plant. I know there were some like 23 respondents or something to that, and went all the way from New Zealand. So I guess I'm curious, what do you guys think government should be doing or could be doing? I have my opinion, but what do you think they could be doing? I'll start with you, maybe August, and work our way back down the table. But
I think government can make it possible. So what they're doing now in the, with the new, in the US, we have all this funding that's going to be available. And I think it's up to, for organizations to be like, okay, I've got this opportunity, because the overall goal is to reduce your resource use. So if you go from that perspective, you can bring in your most crazy idea for modularity and then bring it, so you have incentives. So I don't know, the US has regulations but that doesn't really make real mandates. So say you've got to do BIM, you've got to do this, or you've got to do that. So I don't know about Canada.
Yeah.
But I know that some mandates work very well in the UK. They went with BIM. And for any project over £5 million, you had to have BIM. And this started about 10 years ago. So
16.
Next year is the 10-year anniversary of PAS 1192. And so many organizations, starting with the public buildings, started with BIM. It was slow, and now there's a very big uptick. So yes, some regulation is good, some mandates are really good, but incentives also.
I know Mark Farmer's company, they have a pre-manufactured value calculator. And I know there's governments that were exploring, like, how could you, through the procurement process, say all solutions need to, hit this percentage of pre-manufactured value, or this number. But then there's a huge argument about that PMV and how you actually quantify that. So they have one way of calculating it, but in the research world, a lot of people don't agree. Pat, what do you think?
I think I have the solution. So this is, I feel, very transferable between mass timber and modular. The one example I'll use is that in North America, there is, on an annual basis, close to $3 billion spent around the promotion and training and market development of mass timber. And there's a fraction of that money that actually goes to supporting manufacturing capacity. So there's just this massive demand, but then there's no support for manufacturing startups that meet certain requirements to grow that base of demand, increase cost competitiveness, just increase competitiveness overall and innovation. So I feel that there just has to be more of a shift now that we're into the how. I think it's about, like, manufacturing is not, and I'm going through this right now and trying to raise $250 million for a manufacturing facility. And it's a challenging investment because manufacturing facilities have a fixed capacity. They aren't like a microchip or anything like that can have, unlimited scalability. They're high capital intensive and they are pretty risky. So if we're really going to look at supply chain certainty and increasing capacity and being able to deliver the needs of infrastructure of tomorrow quickly, there has to be a lot of upfront federal and provincial support to support manufacturing facilities like yourself. So that's kind of at the federal level. But I feel at the municipal level, there's something that can really change, and that's around performance densities. If you're planning your master plan and you're trying to incorporate new product into your market or innovation, why not say if you're going to do a modular building, we'll allow 2 more stories, or a mass timber building, you're allowed 2 more stories. Maybe you don't need to do a step back requirement, which is then going to increase the cost effectiveness and efficiency and so on. So I think that there's just role at every level, but ultimately the government's just got to fork over some cash.
I know City of Fredericton, it's a small amount, but they're giving $20,000 to, if you're using a modular solution, to the home builder or whatever it might be. It's small, but it's
But still, it's something.
It's something. Yeah.
So part of the criteria too for the government funding is that it should address a geographic need in the marketplace. So you want to have a national manufacturing umbrella from coast to coast. Yeah. So where is the gap in modular there? It has to be of a certain capacity, and it should have certain project partners. It should have a developer on board that, minimizes that risk for offtake agreements. So I think it's pretty simple, but people just got to get their head out of their ass.
Enda?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is about building a level of confidence in the community at large, that to sort of demonstrate to them that modular is a solution, and it will just take hold then as a sort of viable alternate to stick building. When I think of modular, and having been through many of the modular manufacturer plants right now, I think of worker safety. It's the idea that you're not working at heights compared to traditional build. These are factors that the government should be incentivizing modular and getting behind it for that reason alone.
Lack of skilled trades.
Well, I still think there's a level of skill that's required. Mm-hmm. I think there's. Yeah, I mean that's certainly a broader conversation, but I think for me there's many reasons why the government should get behind it that aren't just
money,
financial,
and maybe that comes in the evaluation process.
Exactly, and I think it's just if they were to take a period of time to incentivize it, it would get its own foothold and become much more competitive financially by virtue of having that foothold and having those guarantees. And it would roll on its own then. That's really what I think would happen. So there is, yes, a period of time that I think the government have to get behind it.
Laurie?
So I agree with everything that everybody said, and I think that's huge as far as the federal government, municipal government, provincial government, just getting behind modular construction for all the right reasons, for the value propositions that are there. So I'm going to go a little bit more granular. I'll give you an example of how the government in Ontario could actually reduce the cost of delivery of modules, and that is Ministry of Transportation has a regulation that's, where I'm going with this, that has, you can put one over-dimensional, modules are over-dimensional, unless you're shipping, it's a shipping container, you're over-dimensional. So that's just a fact of life. So 12'6" wide module, it's a 60-foot long module, and it goes from our plant in Stony Creek to the city of Toronto, and you pay a price and that's it, right? And it may have some restrictions in terms of when it can travel for hours or holidays. Now, if you have a small urban site where you have to have, the density says those modules can't be 60 feet long, you can't maneuver, so now you've got 2 30-foot modules instead to get them in there, to crane them into position, then you can't put 2 30-foot modules on the same trailer. So now you've doubled the cost of transport, which is expensive to start with, right? Because they're over-dimensional loads. You've automatically doubled the cost of transport. So that's my pet peeve in terms of what's a low-hanging fruit that the government could seriously look at and say, well, that doesn't make sense. If we could ship a 12-foot 6 by 60-foot load, it's still a 12-foot 6 by 60-foot load if it's 2 modules on the trailer instead. What's the difference, right? So anyway, so there's all these things, and it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but delivery has a big impact on the cost of modular construction. Depends on where you're going.
Right.
Long distances, right? It's a big cost. So there's that, and then I will address maybe in the U.S. because I did work both sides of the border in my former company. But in the U.S., from a regulatory perspective, most of the states have a state agency that regulates modular construction. And that can be good and bad. If the state agency is not overwhelmed with projects, then it's a good thing, because what happens is the built modular manufacturers design, say it's going into Massachusetts and you're in Pennsylvania. You design for Massachusetts to the Massachusetts Building Code. That drawing for that entire building is submitted to the state of Massachusetts, to their regulatory agency that monitors modular construction. They stamp it. It doesn't even go to the local AHJ. The local AHJ has nothing to do with it, right? So they stamp it, they approve it, it comes back to the plant. Third-party inspectors come in to inspect it during its process that it's being built. The AHJ is hands-off.
Wow.
And that's got to be in at least 35 or 40 states now. So that process, I mean, think about, as long as that agency's not overwhelmed, right? Overburdened. Think about how much that could help. So
you're
there's
saying-
lessons to be learned
Yeah.
everywhere.
Do they not like slow it up the same as it not? Do they not have their own bureaucratic process that's slow and
They can, right? If they're overloaded, but no, I think they trust, they've got really good relationships with third-party inspection agencies, whether it's PFS or TRNO. There's a lot of them out there, and as long as that drawing goes in, it's still got to be engineered for the state. So you've got structural, mechanical, electrical, architects stamps on the drawing that you can't get around that.
Yeah.
And it goes into the state, then the state approves the building, period. And there's nothing for the HJ to even look at.
So I'm realizing now we're over time, actually. No. We were over time when I asked the last question. So I guess next, first, thank you to our panelists.